Hello, and welcome to your YouTube channel, Learn English Lab. Today's podcast topic name is Speaking with Purpose and Direction. So I want you to picture this. It is a incredibly humid, sticky night in Austin, Texas.
Oh man, I can feel the humidity already.
Right, and you are in this small, cramped community center. The fluorescent lights overhead are giving off that really harsh, erratic, buzzing hum.
The worst kind of lighting.
Absolutely the worst. And there are 47 metal folding chairs set up in the room, and the people sitting in them are a real mixed bag. Some look sympathetic, some look completely checked out, their eyes glazed over.
Probably wishing they were anywhere else.
Totally. A few are already scrolling on their phones, their faces lit up by the blue light. And at the front of the room stands a man named Marcus Williams. He has just 3 minutes. 3 minutes to convince the Austin City Council's Community Liaison Committee that his neighborhood, which is this historically black, deeply rooted community called Rosewood, desperately deserves funding for a new youth recreation center.
Wow. I mean, the pressure in a room like that is just palpable. It's a classic local government setting where the stakes are monumentally high for the community, but the environment itself is entirely sterile and uninspiring.
Undeniably. And Marcus knew the stakes. I mean, he had spent 2 grueling weeks prepping for these 3 minutes. He had printed out color-coded charts. He had memorized local crime statistics.
The whole 9 yards.
The whole thing. He had rehearsed in front of his bathroom mirror so many times that his wife, Denise, literally had to knock on the door at 2 in the morning and tell him to come to bed. He had the facts, and he had just an ocean of heart. But in that moment, standing in front of those 47 pairs of expectant, tired eyes, his body just betrays him. His throat tightens up as if a fist is squeezing his vocal cords from the inside.
Oh, that is so tough.
His notes are physically trembling in his hands. Every polished statistic, every compelling argument he had memorized, it just evaporates into thin air.
Yeah, and it's a devastating physiological response. When we're thrust into a high-stakes communication scenario without a solid internal framework, our nervous system actually perceives it as a threat.
Wait, really? A literal threat?
Absolutely. The fight-or-flight response kicks in, cortisol floods the brain, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for logical structuring and articulate speech, it essentially just shuts down.
And that is perfectly what happened to Marcus.
Yeah.
When he finally opened his mouth, it was a complete disaster. He tumbled into this meandering, painful mess.
Let me guess, lots of filler words.
Oh, painfully so.
Yeah.
He was saying things like, Rosewood is a great neighborhood, and we've been there a long time, and the kids don't really have anywhere to go after school, and crime has been, going up in the area.
Yeah, you can hear the structure just collapsing.
Completely. He just kept going and we just think it would be good if maybe there could be some kind of center or something where kids could, hang out. And then he just trailed off into silence. A council member checked her watch. He sat down. They didn't get the funding.
Man, that is heartbreaking to hear, but it so acutely illustrates the vast, terrifying gap between having the facts and having the ability to actually deliver those facts effectively. Marcus later had this profound realization about that night, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Reflecting on it, he said, I had everything I needed inside me. I had the facts. I had the heart. But I didn't know how to aim my words. I was shooting in the dark.
Shooting in the dark. That is such a vivid, evocative way to describe how so many of us communicate when the pressure is on.
It really is. And later that night, sitting alone on his porch with a glass of sweet tea, replaying his failure on a miserable loop in his head, Marcus made a decision that basically sets up our entire deep dive today. She decided he was going to turn the lights on.
He was going to learn to speak with purpose and direction. Spot on. So today, we are taking on a mission to completely transform how you listening right now, use the English language. This isn't about grammar rules. It's about the art of saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and moving people with your words.
It's a transformative journey, really, because when we look at the core of human interaction, we see a fundamental problem. Most people simply wander when they talk.
They really do.
They open their mouths and start vocalizing without having any idea how their sentences are going to end. They're essentially verbalizing their real-time thought process, which is chaotic, nonlinear, and messy.
I always think of it like driving a remarkably powerful sports car. But you have no steering wheel and no map. You are just slamming your foot on the gas pedal, burning through expensive fuel, careening wildly down the road, and desperately hoping you end up somewhere good.
That is a brilliant analogy, but, hope is not a communication strategy.
Definitely not. And we have to acknowledge that for English learners, this challenge is magnified exponentially. If you're communicating in a second language, you are dealing with a double burden.
The double burden, yeah.
You're trying to conceptualize a complex thought while simultaneously translating it, finding the right vocabulary, and worrying about syntax. That double burden often results in speech that feels hesitant or fragmented, not due to a lack of intelligence, never that, but simply because there's no underlying framework to organize the delivery.
So let's decode what Marcus actually needed. What does it mean to speak with purpose and direction?
Well, we need to separate those two concepts to really understand their power. Purpose is your intention. It is the destination you're trying to reach.
Okay, the destination.
Right. Why are you opening your mouth in the first place? What do you want the listener to feel, know, or do? Direction, on the other hand, is the organization of your thoughts. It's the map you use to get the listener to that destination.
So purpose is the where and direction is the how.
Accurately stated. When you combine intention with organization, a kind of magic happens. People stop checking their phones. The cognitive load on the listener drops. They actually hear you, they remember what you said, and most importantly, they respond.
I struggle with this a bit, though, because, if Marcus was so incredibly passionate about this youth center, like if it was in his bones, shouldn't his raw emotion be enough to convince people? When we overly structure our words, don't we risk sounding like, corporate robots? Shouldn't pure authenticity win the day?
That is a very common concern. But passion without structure is really just noise to the human brain. It can actually be overwhelming or even confusing to the listener. Authenticity is absolutely vital, but it needs a vehicle.
Okay, I'm following you.
Think of passion as the engine and structure as the steering wheel. A massive engine is useless if you can't steer the car. This is the exact lesson Marcus learned when he met Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, or Pat, as she prefers to be called. She was a rhetoric mentor at a university in Texas.
Right. And Marcus happened to bump into her at a local independent bookstore while he was desperately flipping through some generic public speaking paperbacks. He's looking at these books filled with cheesy advice like, imagine the audience in their underwear. And she basically taps him on the shoulder and says, that's not going to teach you what you actually need to know.
Yeah, that was a pivotal moment. She introduced him to the true concept of rhetoric. And we need to pause here because people often misunderstand that word. In modern politics, rhetoric is often used as a dirty word, synonymous with manipulation or, empty promises.
Right, like trickery.
Exactly. But Pat taught him the classical definition. Rhetoric is simply the art of persuasive speaking. It is the most practical, deeply empathetic skill you can ever develop because it's the tool that makes your personal truth actually resonate with other people.
That reframes it entirely. Because if you want to speak with genuine candor and deep conviction, it is literally impossible to do that if you constantly ramble or go off on endless digressions.
Sharply put.
If you are digressing, your candor gets buried in the weeds. If you are rambling, your conviction sounds like confusion to the listener.
That is a critical insight. You need a framework to hold your passion. And Dr. Okonkwo provided Marcus with a highly specific, actionable framework. She called it the 5 before you speak. These are 5 fundamental pillars, essential questions you absolutely must ask yourself before you engage in any important communication.
Let's really dwell on these pillars because this is the foundation of everything that follows. So the first pillar is intention. The question you have to ask yourself is, what do I want to achieve? And the key shift here is moving from a vague, cloudy goal to a precise, laser-focused bullseye.
Yes. Let's explore this with a workplace scenario because this is where a lack of intention destroys careers. Imagine you're at a fast-paced tech company. Your team has been working massive, grueling overtime for 3 months straight. Morale is in the basement. People are burning out. You need to talk to your manager.
Okay, setting the scene.
A speaker without intention will walk into that office and initiate a conversation that sounds like this. Hey, so things have been kind of rough lately on the floor and people are just really tired and I don't know, the hours are crazy, and I just think maybe we should talk about it because it's getting bad.
Oh, man. I have literally been in that meeting, both as the employee and as the manager, and it goes nowhere.
Nowhere at all.
The manager just nods sympathetically and says, yeah, I know, it's a really busy season, but I appreciate your hard work. Hang in there. And nothing changes.
Yeah.
The employee leaves feeling unheard, but they didn't actually ask for anything.
Because there was no intention. It was just a verbalization of internal stress. Now, let's look at the exact same problem, but handled by a speaker who has established a highly deliberate intention before walking through that door.
Let's hear it.
They walk in and say, I'd like to discuss the team's current workload. Specifically, I want to propose a rotating schedule that gives each team member one mandatory recovery day per sprint, which I believe will stabilize morale and ultimately improve our shipping productivity.
Boom. That is substantive. The difference in impact is staggering. You aren't just complaining, you are articulating a clear, cogent proposal. You're giving a manager something specific, something tangible to say yes or no to.
It's a difference between venting and leading. Venting pushes the burden of solving the problem onto the listener. Intention offers a path forward. And once you have that intention, you must immediately move to the second pillar, audience.
Right.
The crucial question here is, who am I speaking to? Dr. Okonkwo relentlessly drilled this into Marcus. You are not speaking to yourself, you are speaking to them.
And this was Marcus's fatal error at that very first community meeting. He spoke to those city bureaucrats as if they were his neighbors.
Exactly his mistake.
His neighbors already knew the kids on the block. His neighbors already felt the emotional weight of the rising crime stats. They had a shared emotional investment. But the bureaucrats didn't. Those council members were evaluating 12 different funding proposals that night. They were tired. They needed to know costs, return on investment, operational timelines. Marcus completely misread the room because he didn't consider his audience's cognitive state.
Calibrating your message to your audience is the absolute hallmark of an eloquent speaker. Let's look at how this plays out in a different high-stakes context, a college application interview. Say you're an international student applying to the University of Michigan.
Okay.
The interviewer asks why you want to attend. The wrong approach, the approach that ignores the audience entirely, is saying, I really love learning, and Michigan seems like a great school with a beautiful campus, and I've always wanted to study in America to get a good job.
I can almost hear the admissions officer sighing. That answer could apply to literally any of the thousands of universities in the United States. It shows zero understanding of the specific institution.
Right on the mark. Now let's analyze an audience-aware response. The student looks at the interviewer and says, what drew me to Michigan specifically is the interdisciplinary approach of the College of Engineering. My experience building solar-powered water purification systems in my hometown taught me that engineering solutions fail if you don't understand the social context. Michigan's unique partnership with the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning is the perfect environment for that kind of integrated, community-focused thinking.
Oh, wow. That gives me goosebumps. It is incredibly compelling. It proves you have done the research. It proves you understand what makes their institution unique, and you are taking your personal history and locking it seamlessly into their specific institutional values.
It shows you see them.
Yeah, the admissions officer hears that and thinks, this person belongs here.
Which leads us directly to the third pillar, structure. The guiding question is, what is my roadmap? You can have a brilliant intention and you can know your audience perfectly, but if your words are a disorganized jumble, you will still fail. The human brain craves narrative order. So true.
Dr. Okonkwo introduced Marcus to a framework called the GPS method.
I love the GPS method. It is so visual and so practical. G stands for ground, P stands for path, S stands for summit. Grounding is giving context, like where are we starting? Why are we here? The path is the logical progression of your points, and the summit is the memorable conclusion, the big call to action at the peak of the mountain.
Beautifully summarized.
Let's really break down the corporate example to see the mechanics of this. Imagine you are a project manager presenting a 6-month initiative on reducing customer churn to your company's leadership team in Chicago.
Okay, let's role play the speaker with no structure. They get up to the front of the boardroom and say, so yeah, thanks for coming. We did a lot of research over the last few months on why customers are leaving, and we found some interesting things. There were some challenges with the data, but overall the testing went well, and we tried a few different emails and calls, and I think we should keep going with the new process because it seemed to help. Again, completely forgettable. The executives are already checking their emails. But using the GPS method, you transform that data into a directed journey. You start with the ground to anchor the room. Over the past 6 months, our team set out to answer one critical question. Can we reduce customer churn by 15% through personalized onboarding? Today, I will share exactly what we found and what I recommend we do next.
Look at what that grounding just did. In 2 sentences, you established the timeline, the goal, and the stakes. No one is wondering why they are in the meeting.
Perfect clarity.
Then you lead them up the path. You walk them through the logic sequentially. We tested 3 different onboarding sequences across 2,000 new customers. Sequence A used our standard automated emails. Sequence B added a personalized video from the account manager. Sequence C combined the personalized video with a live check-in call at day 7. The results were striking. Sequence C reduced churn by 22%, exceeding our target by a full 7 percentage points.
It is so lucid. You are leading them up the mountain step by step. You gave them the variables, the test, and the result, and then, having earned their trust through logic, you hit the summit. Based on these definitive results, I am recommending we implement Sequence C company-wide, starting in Q3. The projected revenue impact is $1.2 million annually. I would like to spend the rest of our time discussing resourcing for the rollout.
It is directed. It is substantive. Not a single word is wasted. Every sentence pushes the narrative forward toward that summit. And notice how the summit wasn't just a summary. It was a clear call to action and a transition into the next phase of the meeting.
Which brings us to the 4th pillar, clarity. The question is, am I being understood? Now, I want to dive into this because clarity is tricky. It isn't just about using simple words for the sake of it. It's about using the right words. It means your listener does not have to burn precious mental energy trying to decipher what you're trying to say.
This is a massive trap, particularly in professional environments and academia, and especially for English learners who may feel insecure and want to prove their linguistic proficiency. There's a deeply ingrained myth that complexity equals intelligence.
Oh, absolutely.
People use heavy, jargon-filled, convoluted sentences because they think it makes them sound authoritative. But complexity is often a mask for a lack of clear thinking. If you're using $10 words but your listener is lost in the maze of your sentence, your vocabulary is worthless. The goal is not to sound smart. The goal is to be understood.
Clarity is about being incisive. It is about precision. I love the medical example we have for this. If you go to a doctor in Houston, you shouldn't sit on the exam table and say, I've been feeling kind of bad lately, like just not great, and my stomach does this weird thing sometimes, and I'm tired a lot, just feel off.
That is painfully unclear. A doctor has to play a dangerous guessing game with that information. Is it a virus? Is it an ulcer? Is it stress? A clear, precise approach removes the guesswork.
How would that sound?
For the past 3 weeks, I have experienced a sharp abdominal pain in my lower right side. It primarily happens about 30 minutes after eating, and it lasts for about 20 minutes each time. I have also noticed significant fatigue. I am sleeping 9 hours a night, but still feeling exhausted by mid-afternoon.
You aren't dumbing the language down. You are being incredibly specific. It is organized, it is clear, and it leads directly to a better, faster medical outcome. That is the essence of being succinct.
Which brings us to the 5th and final and perhaps most elusive pillar, conviction. The question you must ask yourself is, do I actually believe what I am saying? You can master intention, audience, structure, and clarity, but if your delivery lacks conviction, your message will fall flat.
Why is that?
Humans are highly evolved social creatures. We are deeply attuned to microexpressions and vocal tonality. We can sense instantly when someone believes their own words, and we definitely sense when they don't.
And this was Marcus's biggest hurdle at first. He believed in the youth center with all his heart, but his language betrayed him. He hedged constantly. He used words that shrank his presence. We just think it would be good if maybe there could be... it sounds like he is apologizing for even taking up the room's oxygen.
Dr. Okonkwo taught him a concept she called embodied certainty. This is crucial. Embodied certainty is not about being arrogant, loud, or aggressive. It is a calm, grounded, quiet gravitas that comes from trusting your own preparation and your right to speak. It's physical. Shoulders back, breathing deeply from the diaphragm, making steady eye contact.
Let's apply that to a salary negotiation, because I think that is the scenario where people hedge the absolute most. Their nerves take over.
Oh, for sure.
Let's say you get a job offer in New York. The role is perfect, but the salary is too low. Let's role play the speaker who lacks conviction. They get on the phone with HR and say, hi, so thank you for the offer. I was kind of hoping for maybe a little more. I don't know. I just thought it might be possible to negotiate a bit if there's room in the budget.
It is physically painful to hear. By hedging, by using words like kind of, maybe, and like, you are practically inviting the employer to say no. You are signaling that you don't even believe you deserve it.
Right.
Now, let's look at a speaker with conviction. They demonstrate incredible poise. They sit up straight, lower their vocal register slightly, and say, thank you for the offer. I am genuinely excited about this role. Based on my 7 years of experience, my specialized certification in data analytics, and the current market rate for this position in New York, which ranges from $95,000 to $115,000, I would like to propose a starting salary of $108,000. I am confident I can deliver value that justifies that investment.
That is just brilliant. It isn't aggressive at all. It is assured. It is the voice of someone who knows their worth, has done the math, and has the tenacity to articulate it clearly. The HR manager might still negotiate, but they will respect you instantly.
Absolutely. They hear the cogency of your argument.
Okay, so those are the 5 pillars of purposeful speaking: intention, audience, structure, clarity, and conviction. But here is where our deep dive gets incredibly practical. These frameworks aren't just for politicians at podiums or executives in boardrooms. These are fundamental survival tools for everyday life.
Let's get into it.
Let's look at 4 highly relatable real-world situations where applying this framework completely changes the trajectory of a person's life.
Let's start with a high-pressure scenario in Seattle.
Yeah.
Priya is an intermediate English speaker originally from Hyderabad, India. She's interviewing for a senior software engineering position. She is highly qualified, brilliant at coding, but her nervous instinct is to over-explain. This is a very common anxiety response.
Oh, absolutely. When you feel imposter syndrome or you are worried your English isn't perfect, you feel like if you just give them more information, if you just keep talking, they will eventually see how smart you are.
But the opposite happens. The interviewer asks her about a technical challenge she faced. Without a map, Priya starts rambling about a 6-month project. She names every single team member, describes the layout of the old office, explains every minor technical glitch, and the interviewer zones out after 30 seconds. The core achievement is buried under an avalanche of irrelevant details.
But Priya learns to fix this.
Oh.
She learns to take a classic, well-known interview technique, the STAR method, and map it directly onto the GPS method we just learned. For those who don't know, STAR stands for situation, task, action, result.
Vividly put, so situation and task form the ground. Action is the path, result is the summit. Watch how Priya transforms her answer. Instead of a 5-minute ramble, she delivers a directed 60-second narrative. She starts with the ground. At my previous company, we were migrating a massive legacy database to AWS. 2 weeks before launch, the lead engineer unexpectedly resigned.
Perfect. She grounded the listener. We know the stakes and the crisis. Then she walks the path. I stepped in to lead the remaining team. I restructured the timeline, identified the 3 highest risk tasks, and established daily 15-minute stand-ups to ensure no one was blocked.
And finally, she delivers the summit. Because of that restructuring, we delivered the migration 2 days ahead of the revised deadline with 0 data loss. The client was so impressed they renewed their contract for an additional 2 years.
It is breathtakingly concise. It showcases her leadership, her crisis management, and her technical judgment without a single wasted word. The interviewer doesn't have to hunt for her competence. She handed it to them on a silver platter.
Accurately stated.
Let's move to Atlanta for our second scenario, because this one deals with high emotional stakes. Carlos, an advanced English learner from Mexico City, is going to a parent-teacher conference. His 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, is struggling with reading, and Carlos is anxious.
These meetings are notoriously difficult because parents often walk in completely lacking intention. Their protective instincts take over. They usually fall into one of 2 extremes. They either become entirely passive, nodding along and saying whatever you think is best, which leaves the child without advocacy.
Right.
Or they get defensive and aggressive, crossing their arms and saying, "Why aren't you teaching her? Why isn't she learning?"
Carlos knows that neither approach will help Sophia. So he uses the pillars to completely change the psychological dynamic of the meeting. He defines his intention. He wants a specific, actionable plan with measurable goals. He analyzes his audience. The teacher is not his enemy. The teacher is an overworked professional managing 30 kids who needs collaboration, not hostility.
So Carlos uses the GPS structure to build a bridge. He starts with the ground. Thank you for taking the time to meet. I've been reviewing Sophia's reading scores over the past month and noticed they've declined. I would love to understand what you are observing in the classroom, specifically in your professional opinion. Is she struggling with comprehension, fluency, or vocabulary?
Notice what he did there. He stated the facts without accusation, and he deferred to her expertise, which instantly disarms any defensiveness the teacher might have felt. Then he moves to the path. Once we identify the core issue, I would like us to create a plan together, maybe a combination of targeted classroom support and specific activities I can do with her at home every evening.
And he finishes with a unified summit. My goal is for us to work as a team so Sophia can be reading at grade level by the end of the semester. It is masterful communication. He replaces blame with partnership. He's emphatic about his goal, but incredibly collaborative in his approach. This is how you galvanize a teacher to be on your team.
Now let's look at a completely different cultural dynamic. Miami, Florida. Yuki, a Japanese exchange student, is out to dinner at a busy restaurant. She clearly ordered the grilled salmon, but the waiter brings her a plate of pasta. When she hesitates, the waiter is dismissive and rushes away. In many cultures, including Yuki's, the polite expected thing to do is simply eat the pasta, avoid making a scene, and swallow your frustration.
The cultural conditioning here is profound. For many learners coming from high-context, harmony-focused cultures, the idea of speaking up to a service worker feels intensely uncomfortable. They feel they must either be entirely deferential, or if they do speak up, they feel awkwardly hostile. Yuki has to learn how to be assertive without feeling aggressive.
Let's role-play the deferential approach. The waiter walks by and Yuki shrinks down and says, excuse me, sorry. I think maybe this isn't what I ordered. I think I asked for the salmon. Sorry to bother you. She is apologizing for the restaurant's mistake.
Exactly. It undermines her position. But Yuki applies the pillars. She identifies her intention, get the salmon. She uses directed, clear language. When the waiter returns, she makes eye contact and says, excuse me, I ordered the grilled salmon, but I received the pasta. I would like the correct dish, please. And since the error wasn't mine, I would appreciate it if the original order could be expedited. Thank you.
That is incredible poise. Yeah. She is standing firmly in her truth. She isn't shouting. She isn't rude. She states the problem, makes the request, adds a reasonable expectation regarding time, and closes politely. She isn't apologizing for existing.
And notice the absolute brevity of it. There is no emotional leakage. It is highly effective, low-drama communication.
Okay, this fourth scenario absolutely fascinates me. We are back in Denver with Marcus, our guy from the Austin Community Center. He and his wife Denise have moved. He needs to have a very difficult conversation with Denise about money. He wants to spend $5,000 of their joint savings on a public speaking intensive workshop in Washington, D.C. to further his career. But he knows Denise desperately wants to use that exact money for a family vacation they've been putting off for years.
Money conversations are the graveyard of marital communication. This is where most couples devolve into an amygdala hijack. They stop listening and just start repeating their entrenched positions louder and louder, bringing up past resentments until someone storms out of the room.
But Marcus applies the exact same rhetoric principles he used for the city council on his own wife. When I first read this, I thought, isn't that manipulative, using a framework on your spouse? But it shows that structure isn't inherently cold or corporate. In an intimate relationship, clarity is actually an act of deep empathy. It creates safety and stops the circular arguments.
That is an incredibly astute observation. Structure creates safety. Marcus analyzes his audience, Denise. He knows her deeply. She values fairness, financial security, and family togetherness. If he just marches in and announces his decision to spend the money, she will feel profoundly disrespected and immediately go on the defensive. So he structures his approach to honor her priorities first.
Let's look at his GPS. He grounds the conversation in shared values. Denise, I want to talk to you about our savings, and I want to start by saying that the family vacation is a huge priority for me too. I know how much it means to you and the kids to get away, and I do not want to take that away from us.
Well,
look at the psychology there. I do not want to take that away. He immediately lowers her defenses.
He validates her reality before introducing his own. Then he walks the path. That said, I have been thinking a lot about this public speaking training in DC. I genuinely believe it could be a transformative step for my career and our future earning potential. The intensive costs $5,000. He is entirely transparent. No hiding the cost, no minimizing it.
And then the summit, which in a marriage is usually a proposed compromise. What if we do the training in June and we push the vacation to late August? I can pick up extra freelance consulting work in July, specifically to cover the difference, so our core savings stay intact. What do you think?
He invites dialogue at the end. It is a beautifully nuanced, deeply respectful application of purpose and direction. He didn't demand, he proposed a structured solution that addressed her fears.
It really is beautiful. Now for our final real-world scenario, we go to Nashville, Tennessee. David, originally from Nigeria, is the best man at his college roommate Tyler's wedding. Wedding toasts are notoriously treacherous. Most people just grab the microphone after 3 drinks, tell an inside joke that only 2 people in the room understand, ramble for 5 agonizing minutes about how crazy they used to be, and end with a week. So yeah, Tyler's a great guy. Cheers.
They fail because they lack a roadmap. They confuse a string of memories with a coherent narrative. David uses the GPS method to craft something truly evocative and memorable for all 200 guests, not just his college buddies.
He grounds the entire room with a relatable, universally funny story. I met Tyler on my first day at Howard University.
Yeah.
I was unpacking my bags, and this guy accidentally walks into the completely wrong dorm room, sits on my bed, opens my bag of chips, starts eating them, looks at me and says, "You must be my new best friend."
It is a phenomenal hook. It establishes their bond instantly. Then David walks the path of escalating emotional moments. He moves from the humor of the chips to Tyler staying up until 3 a.m. to help David pass organic chemistry. Then he moves to a deeper moment. Tyler driving 8 hours round trip in a snowstorm to surprise David at his mother's funeral so he wouldn't be alone. The cadence of his storytelling builds the emotional weight perfectly.
And the summit is remarkably poignant. He turns to the couple and says, "Tyler and Sarah, your love is the kind that makes the rest of us believe in love. Here is to a lifetime of walking into the wrong rooms, late night study sessions, and knowing a good thing when you see it. Cheers."
It connects the opening joke directly to the deep emotional core of the wedding. It is a toast with incredible resonance, and there isn't a dry eye in the house.
It's beautiful. So we have explored these incredible structural tools, the GPS method, the STAR method, the 5 pillars. But there is a massive looming elephant in the room that we need to address. What happens if a speaker knows all these frameworks? They have their notes perfectly organized, but their mind is so cluttered with deep-seated self-doubt that they physically cannot get the words out. This brings us to a crucial part of our deep dive, the inner game.
This is a dimension of communication that most technical corporate guides completely ignore, which is a tragedy. Before words ever leave your mouth, before they vibrate your vocal cords, they must pass through an internal landscape of your own beliefs, biases, and fears. Dr. Okonkwo called this the inner permission to speak.
The inner permission to speak. That phrase actually gives me chills.
It is profound. Many people, particularly those from marginalized communities, immigrants, non-native English speakers, or women operating in male-dominated industries, carry this deeply internalized toxic belief that they simply do not have the right to take up space. Society has subtly, or sometimes overtly, told them that unless their speech is utterly flawless, devoid of any accent, and perfectly grammatical, they have not earned the right to be heard.
And Dr. Okonkwo told Marcus that this belief is a complete lie. The myth of flawless execution is the biggest enemy of intentional communication. But I have to push back here because it is very easy for us to sit in a recording studio and say, your voice matters, just be confident. But in the real world, people absolutely judge accents. They judge minor grammatical slips. People have implicit biases. How do you mentally overcome the harsh reality of that bias?
You don't ignore it. You acknowledge the reality of the bias, but you absolutely refuse to let it define the cogency of your ideas. An accent is simply a sign of bravery. It means you speak more than one language. It does not diminish the logic of an argument. Occasional grammatical errors do not erase your lived expertise or your professional value. We must look at historical examples purely as masters of rhetoric, speaking impartially about their communication skills.
Right, looking purely at their rhetorical impact.
Exactly. Think of Frederick Douglass. He taught himself to read while enslaved, enduring unimaginable trauma, yet he became one of the most eloquent, thunderous orators in American history. Or Cesar Chavez, whose first language was Spanish, who galvanized a massive national labor movement. Their power, their ability to move thousands of people did not come from adhering to flawless, gate-kept standard English. It came from an unshakable, burning conviction in the truth of their message. That is so empowering. It reframes the whole goal. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be purposeful. Perfection is a stalling tactic. And there is a very specific, damaging habit that ruins this inner confidence, especially for learners. The pre-apology.
Oh, yes, the pre-apology is devastating. Sorry, my English isn't very good, but I think, or I might be wrong here, but it is a natural defense mechanism. You want to lower their expectations so they don't judge you harshly. But psychologically, it does the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It instantly primes the listener to look for your mistakes. It undermines your credibility before you even state your premise.
So what's the alternative?
Deleting the pre-apology is a pivotal step in the inner game. If you are speaking and you need a moment to find a specific English word, don't apologize. Just pause and say, let me find the precise word for this. It frames you as thoughtful and meticulous, not deficient. I love that reframe. Let me find the precise word. It commands respect. Okay, assuming we have done the internal work, we have granted ourselves the permission to speak, Let's step into the advanced masterclass. How do we take these foundations and execute them at an elite level while simultaneously breaking our worst communication habits?
Let's start with a technique that feels terrifying to most people, but is incredibly effective. The power pause.
Power pause.
Yes. Most speakers are terrified of silence. They feel that if they stop talking for even a millisecond, they will lose the floor. So they fill every microscopic gap with filler words, But strategic silence is the most powerful tool in a master communicator's arsenal. When you pause before a key point, you build incredible anticipation. When you pause after a key point, you give the listener's brain the necessary time to absorb the emotional and logical impact of what you just said.
Okay, I am going to physically demonstrate this right now for the listener. Pay attention to how this feels. If I tell you that the ultimate secret to commanding a room is silence, you feel the weight of that. 2 full seconds of silence feels like an absolute eternity when you are the one speaking. Your heart is pounding. But to the listener, it sounds like pure, unadulterated gravitas.
Beautifully demonstrated. The next advanced technique is the anchor phrase. This is a short, rhythmic, highly memorable sentence that encapsulates the entire core of your message. Think of historical anchor phrases. John F. Kennedy had, "Ask not what your country can do for you." Martin Luther King Jr. had, "I have a dream."
What about Marcus?
Marcus, in his preparation, developed his own anchor phrase for his second attempt at the city council. "I'm not asking you to take a risk. I'm asking you to make an investment." You build your entire structural GPS to deliver that one unforgettable phrase.
It's the phrase people will be repeating to each other in the hallway after the meeting is over. It's the sticky idea. Now, what about when things get tense? We talked about Marcus and Denise, but in a professional setting, how do we handle direct conflict or hostile questions without it turning into a fight?
That is where the bridge technique and mirroring come into play. The bridge technique allows you to acknowledge someone's objection without surrendering your purpose or getting defensive. The formula is simple but powerful. I understand their point, and what I'd like to focus on is your point. Notice the word "and," never use "but." "But" negates their concern.
Let's roleplay that. I'll be the hostile executive. Look, this offer proposal is way too expensive. We simply don't have the budget for this right now.
Instead of arguing the budget, I use the bridge. I understand that budget is a primary concern this quarter, and what I'd like to focus on is the $200,000 we will save in operational costs by Q4 if we implement this now.
Wow. You validated my concern, but you firmly steered the car back onto your path. You didn't take the bait. And mirroring works hand in hand with that, right?
Absolutely. Mirroring is a psychological tool where you reflect the speaker's specific emotive words back to them to build instant rapport. If a colleague comes to you and says, "I am so frustrated that this project deadline keeps getting moved," you don't say, "Calm down, it's fine." You say, "It sounds like you're deeply frustrated that the deadline isn't being treated as a priority." It creates instant psychological safety because they feel genuinely heard and validated.
Which makes them infinitely more receptive to whatever logical solution you propose next. Okay, the last advanced framework is specifically for giving informational updates, the what so what now what framework. It is so elegantly simple, yet nobody uses it.
It is the ultimate tool to avoid corporate rambling. What is the objective facts? Our customer satisfaction score dropped 13 points this month. So, what explains why the listener should care? This puts us below the industry benchmark and historically correlates with the spike in customer churn. Now, what is the clear action plan? I recommend a 3-part recovery plan starting with a direct feedback loop to our top 20 clients. Clean, directed, substantive.
It completely cures the most common mistake in business communication: burying the lead. When someone spends 5 agonizing minutes giving background history before getting to the actual point of the meeting, your listener's attention and cognitive energy are at their absolute peak at the very beginning of the interaction. You have to use it.
Speaking of common mistakes, another major one is speaking without listening. People treat communication as a monologue. They are just holding their breath, waiting for their turn to deliver their pre-planned speech. But if you do that, you miss the nuances of the other person's emotional state, their body language, or their unstated objections. True communication is a dynamic dialogue. You have to actively calibrate your response based on the data you are receiving while you listen.
And finally, the mistake we touched on earlier: using complexity as a mask. Trying to sound brilliant with massive, convoluted, multi-clause sentences. To prove how unnecessary this is, we have to look at Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It is widely considered one of the greatest, most impactful speeches in American history. It redefined the nation. Do you know how long it is? It's only 272 words long. It took about 2 minutes to deliver. And almost all of those words are simple, one or two syllable words. As Shakespeare wrote, brevity is the soul of wit.
Simplicity is not a weakness. It is the ultimate sophistication. To achieve that level of crystal clear clarity takes incredible discipline and editing, which brings us to the crucial final phase of our journey, the daily practice and the triumphant return. Knowing these techniques intellectually is useless if you don't build the neurological muscle memory. It requires deep, consistent tenacity.
You can't just listen to this deep dive once and expect to be a master orator tomorrow. We have a phenomenal, highly practical routine to share. The 5-5-1-0-3D schedule. Let's walk the listener through exactly how to build this habit.
It starts small. 5 minutes in the morning. Intention setting. Before your day gets chaotic while you are having your coffee, pick one specific conversation you know you are going to have that day. It could be a meeting, a phone call with your spouse, anything. Write down your precise intention for it. Define your bullseye.
Just writing it down engages a different part of the brain. Then 5 minutes midday. Vocabulary practice. Take one of those complex words you want to master, words like articulate, deliberate, evocative, or elucidate, and force yourself to use it naturally 3 times that day, either in emails or spoken conversations.
It forces active integration rather than passive memorization. Then, 10 minutes in the evening. Reflection. Look back at your most significant conversation of the day. Be honest with yourself. Did you wander? Were you concise? Did you maintain embodied conviction, or did you shrink? What is one specific thing you will fix tomorrow?
And then comes the most challenging but most transformative part. 30 minutes weekly for record and review. You pick a topic and you record yourself speaking on your phone for 2 uninterrupted minutes. Then you force yourself to listen to it.
It is deeply, intensely uncomfortable. You will cringe, you will hear every single filler word, every wandering tangent, every nervous hesitation, but you cannot fix what you cannot hear. After analyzing the painful first draft, you re-record it, consciously applying the GPS method, the power pause, and the anchor phrase. That deliberate, highly uncomfortable practice is what rewires your brain and creates lasting transformation.
That is how you build true resonant intonation and proper pacing. And that grueling, unglamorous practice in the mirror is exactly what Marcus Williams dedicated himself to for 14 long months. Let's bring his incredible story full circle. 14 months after his humiliating failure, Marcus walks back into that exact same community center in Austin. The exact same harsh fluorescent lights are buzzing overhead. The exact same 47 folding chairs are set up. The same weary council members are sitting at the folding tables. But Marcus is a completely different man.
He doesn't have a stack of complicated, color-coded charts this time. He isn't clutching trembling notes. He steps up to the podium, plants his feet firmly to establish embodied certainty, looks out at the audience, and he embraces a power pause. He waits for total silence. And then he tells a story. He grounds them.
He looks at the committee and says in a calm, steady voice, "Last Tuesday night, a 12-year-old boy named Jalen Walker was sitting alone on the curb outside the boarded-up gas station on Chicon Street. It was 9:00 p.m. on a school night. The streetlights were out. I pulled over and asked him what he was doing out so late. Do you know what he told me?" Marcus uses another power pause here. "The room is dead." Pin drops silent. He looked up at me and said, "There's nowhere else to go, Mr. Williams."
It is incredibly evocative. It shatters the bureaucratic sterility of the room. Marcus understood that this specific committee, fatigued by numbers, needed to feel emotionally connected to the human stakes before they'd be logically convinced to spend money. He led with vivid humanity, not dry statistics.
Then he smoothly transitions to walk the path. Having captured their hearts, he engages their minds. He formally asks for the $200,000 for the Rosewood Youth Center, but he details exactly where every dollar goes. The 6 days a week operating hours, the 2 trained trauma counselors, the renovated basketball court. He brings in comparative success data from similar centers in Dallas and Houston to prove the model works. He is clear, incisive, and unshakable.
And then, having laid a flawless foundation of both emotion and logic, he hits the summit. He looks right into the eyes of the committee chair, and with total quiet conviction, he delivers his anchor phrase. "I am not asking you to take a risk. I am asking you to make an investment. An investment in kids like Jalen, who are literally sitting on the curb, waiting for someone in this room to give them somewhere to go."
The conviction in his voice, the direct, unflinching eye contact, the open, confident body language, it was undeniable. The room didn't just polite clap, they erupted in genuine applause. Yeah. He didn't just get a yes, he got the full $200,000 funding without a single caveat.
And the real-world impact of that communication mastery is staggering. Years later, Marcus is now the executive director of that fully built community corporation. Violent crime in the Rosewood area is down by 34%. And Jalen Walker, that 12-year-old boy sitting in the dark on the curb, he is now a freshman in college. He is studying criminal justice on a scholarship, planning to become a community advocate himself.
It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that finding your voice isn't just about personal career success or winning an argument. It can literally alter the trajectory of a human life and the fabric of an entire community. The ultimate takeaway Marcus offers us is profound. Your voice is not a special gift you need to earn. It is a fundamental tool you already possess. You just have to start using it intentionally. Start messy. Start scared. Start with a shaky voice, a pounding heart, and imperfect grammar. But start.
Start, because the world desperately needs to hear the truth of what you have to say, delivered with clarity and purpose.
Start. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, provocative thought. It is something that isn't explicitly written in the frameworks, but it is the inevitable evolution of this journey. When you finally learn to speak with deep purpose and direction, something else happens inside your brain. You completely change how you listen. When you know how to build a message, you start hearing the hidden intentions, the buried leads, the desperate hedging, and the silent, fearful pauses in everyone else's words. You don't just become a better speaker, you become a master decoder of human behavior. You begin to see the invisible matrix of human communication happening all around you.
That is a stunning realization. When you master the architecture of your own internal thoughts, you instantly recognize the architecture, or the painful lack thereof, in others. It makes you a more empathetic listener, a sharper negotiator, and a vastly more effective leader.
It changes absolutely everything. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the profound art of purpose and direction. Please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.